It almost always happens quietly. You sit down after a long day, your mind still somewhere else, and before you even realize your dog has moved, a paw rests gently on your hand or your leg. Not scratching, not pushing, not demanding. Just there. Most people instinctively assume they know what it means. The dog wants food, attention, a walk, or maybe another belly rub. And sometimes that explanation is true. Dogs absolutely learn that touching humans creates responses. But researchers who study canine behavior have started paying closer attention to the details surrounding this gesture. The timing, the pressure, the stillness afterward, and what they are discovering suggests something far more emotionally complex is happening beneath the surface. A dog placing a paw on you is not always a request. In many cases, it may be a form of communication layered with instinct, memory, social bonding, and emotional regulation all at once. Part of what makes the gesture so powerful is how subtle it is. Dogs already have dramatic ways of expressing excitement. They jump, spin, bark, race toward the door, and explode with energy when they are happy. But the paw is different. It often appears in quiet moments when nothing obvious is happening. While you are reading, staring into space, working, or sitting silently with your thoughts, your dog notices your stillness and responds with contact. That small weight on your wrist or knee can create an emotional shift that people feel immediately but struggle to explain. Something softens. Your breathing changes. You suddenly feel accompanied in a way that is strangely intimate for such a tiny movement. Scientists now believe these moments matter because dogs evolved to communicate socially through physical contact in ways humans often underestimate. What seems like a simple habit may actually carry emotional meaning deeply connected to trust, safety, and connection. The remarkable part is that dogs do not need language to create this feeling. Through thousands of years beside humans, they developed the ability to communicate reassurance through gestures small enough to be missed entirely. And perhaps that is why the paw feels so powerful when we finally stop and notice it. It is not loud, dramatic, or attention-seeking. It is quiet enough to feel personal, almost like a whisper that says, "I'm here with you." When scientists began studying why dogs place their paws on humans, they discovered the behavior is far more complex than a simple request for attention. In reality, at least 3 different systems are often operating at the same time, blending instinct, memory, learning, and emotional signaling into one small gesture. The first layer is learned communication, something behavioral researchers call manding. At some point, usually during puppyhood, accidentally places a paw on a human and immediately receives a response. The person looks over, speaks softly, pets them, or gives affection. From the dog's perspective, the behavior worked. It successfully created connection and interaction, so the nervous system reinforces it. Over time, the dog learns that touching humans with a paw is an effective way to communicate. This explanation is real and important, but it only explains part of the behavior. Beneath the learned habit is something much older. Puppies instinctively knead their mother's body with their paws while nursing to stimulate milk flow. This movement becomes associated with warmth, safety, nourishment, and physical closeness during the earliest stage of life. Researchers believe the motor pattern itself never fully disappears. Instead, it evolves as the dog matures. The paw that once pressed against the mother for survival becomes repurposed into a social gesture connected to comfort and attachment. In this sense, when an adult dog rests a paw gently on a person, traces of infancy may still exist underneath the behavior. The final layer may be the most emotionally meaningful of all. Norwegian canine ethologist Turid Rugas identified paw lifting and gentle paw placement as part of a larger system of calming signals, subtle body language behaviors dogs use to reduce tension and communicate peaceful intent. In canine social language, a low, soft paw is not aggressive or demanding. It functions more like reassurance. The gesture says, "I am safe. I am not a threat. I want connection, not conflict." Unlike barking, jumping, or pawing forcefully for attention, this type of touch is quiet and emotionally regulated. That distinction matters because dogs evolved as highly social animals capable of communicating emotional states through incredibly subtle physical signals. When these 3 systems overlap, learned reinforcement, infant motor memory, and calming communication, the result becomes something remarkably layered. A dog's paw is no longer just a trained habit or reflexive action. It becomes a gesture carrying emotional meaning across multiple levels of the nervous system at once. What makes the behavior so powerful is that humans often feel the emotional effect before consciously understanding it. A soft paw resting on your arm can instantly create calm, intimacy, and reassurance, because the gesture itself evolved through thousands of years of social bonding between dogs and humans. In many ways, the paw is not merely asking for something. It is expressing relationship itself through touch. For a long time, many scientists assumed dogs approached distressed humans mainly to calm themselves. The idea was simple. People crying or showing strong emotion created stress, and dogs moved closer because they wanted reassurance or comfort from their owners. But a series of experiments began challenging that assumption in ways researchers did not expect. In High, psychologists at Goldsmiths University of London designed a deceptively simple study involving dogs, their owners, and complete strangers. One person in the room would either cry softly or speak in a calm, neutral voice while researchers observed how the dogs reacted. If dogs were only seeking comfort for themselves, they should have approached their owner regardless of who was distressed. Instead, the dogs consistently moved toward whoever was crying, even when the crying person was a stranger they had never met before. Their body language was especially revealing. The dogs approached slowly, lowered their posture, nuzzled, licked, leaned against the person, and sought gentle physical contact. These were not signs of panic or self-soothing. They resembled affiliative social behaviors associated with comfort and emotional connection. Researchers concluded the dogs appeared to be offering comfort rather than simply seeking it. In other words, the dogs were responding directly to human emotional distress itself. Several years later, scientists at Johns Hopkins University expanded this question through an experiment nicknamed Timmy's in the Well, inspired by the old Lassie stories. Dogs were separated from their owners by a clear door held shut with magnets that could easily be pushed open. Some owners were instructed to hum quietly, while others pretended to cry and call for help. Most dogs eventually opened the door in both situations, but the difference in timing was extraordinary. Dogs whose owners were crying opened the door nearly 3 times faster than dogs hearing calm humming. The emotional urgency clearly changed their behavior. But the most important discovery involved the dogs who failed to open the door at all. At first glance, these dogs appeared indifferent or less attached to their owners. Yet, physiological measurements revealed the opposite. Many showed intense signs of stress, including pacing, panting, whining, and elevated heart rates. Researchers realized these dogs were not emotionally disconnected. They were overwhelmed by distress so intense that it interfered with action. Their empathy-like response had effectively paralyzed them. This finding changed how scientists interpreted canine emotional behavior. Dogs may not understand human suffering the way humans do, but they are deeply affected by it. The emotional states of the people around them seem to enter their nervous systems in powerful ways. Suddenly, the quiet paw resting on your arm or the dog leaning silently against your leg begins to look different. It may not simply be a request for comfort at all. It may be your dog responding to emotions you have not even spoken aloud. The deeper scientists looked into touch between dogs and humans, the more they realized that something biologically profound may be happening beneath even the smallest physical contact. Neuroscientists studying mammals discovered a special class of nerve fibers known as C-tactile afferents, ATT. Unlike ordinary sensory nerves that detect pressure, texture, or temperature, these fibers are specifically tuned for slow, gentle, sustained touch. They respond most strongly to the exact kind of contact involved in affectionate social bonding: a hand resting softly on skin, slow stroking, or the quiet weight of a dog's paw placed gently against a person. What makes these nerve fibers remarkable is where they send their signals. Instead of prioritizing the brain's sensory mapping systems, they connect strongly to emotional processing regions, especially the insular cortex, an area involved in emotional awareness, empathy, and the internal feeling states of the body. Researchers believe these touch pathways act as social safety signals, informing the nervous system that the environment is safe enough to relax. At the same time, calming input spreads toward the amygdala, the brain structure heavily involved in fear and threat detection. In practical terms, sustained affectionate touch can biologically lower alarm responses inside the brain. This system exists across mammals, including both humans and dogs. That means when your dog rests a paw on your arm and leaves it there, both nervous systems may be processing a similar category of emotional information at the same time. The gesture is not merely symbolic or behavioral, it may function as a real neurobiological signal communicating safety, closeness, and emotional regulation through physical contact itself. This idea becomes even more compelling when viewed through the lens of evolution. In Heingenlair, Heimemort, researchers compared how dogs and wolves responded hormonally to physical contact with humans. Both groups had been hand-raised by people and were comfortable around their caretakers, making the comparison especially important. Scientists measured oxytocin levels, the hormone strongly associated with trust, bonding, and social attachment. The dogs showed a clear increase in oxytocin linked to affectionate physical contact with humans. Wolves, despite their familiarity with people, did not show the same pattern. This suggests that dogs did not simply inherit human bonding behaviors from their wolf ancestors. Instead, during thousands of years of domestication, dogs evolved specialized hormonal systems that reward affiliative touch with humans. Physical closeness itself became biologically meaningful. Over generations, natural selection appears to have strengthened the emotional calming effect of contact between dogs and people, because that connection improved cooperation, social stability, and survival. The result is extraordinary when you stop to think about it. A dog placing its paw on you may not only feel emotionally comforting psychologically, it may literally be altering stress regulation inside both brains at once. Beneath that small gesture exists a shared mammalian system built for attachment, reassurance, and emotional safety. Near the end of one man's story about his dog Tex, the science almost stops mattering because the emotion becomes impossible to separate from the behavior itself. His wife had been diagnosed with ALS, a disease that slowly takes away the body while leaving the mind painfully aware of every stage of decline. During the months she could still remain in their bedroom, Tex slept beside her every night with her pink bathrobe nearby. When she eventually moved into a hospital bed in the living room, Tex moved too. The space was cramped and uncomfortable. But he stayed there anyway, sleeping near her feet for months, as if proximity itself mattered more than comfort. Later, when she was transferred into hospice care, the family brought Tex to visit her one final time. The dog climbed carefully onto the bed and rested both paws gently on her hand. He did not bark, whine, or demand anything. He simply stayed there in contact with her. That night, according to the story, Tex became restless. By morning, he had died curled beneath her bathrobe, and his owner passed away the following day. Science cannot fully explain moments like that, and maybe it does not need to. But stories like Tex's force people to reconsider what canine touch might truly represent. A paw placed softly on a hand during illness, grief, fear, or exhaustion often feels different from ordinary attention-seeking behavior because it may carry emotional meaning far beyond a request. The research on touch, oxytocin, and emotional signaling suggests that dogs do not need humans to respond perfectly for attachment to work. They do not keep emotional score. They do not measure how many times you noticed the paw, how many times you absent-mindedly moved it away, or how distracted you were in the moment. The emotional communication itself still matters. Dogs evolved alongside humans for thousands of years, developing nervous systems that find calm, reassurance, and connection through physical closeness. That is why even the smallest contact can feel strangely powerful during difficult moments. Beneath the gesture may exist a quiet biological message shaped by evolution itself. I am here with you. You are not alone. So the next time your dog rests a paw on your arm or your hand, you may not need to interpret it at all. Just let the paw stay. Sometimes that simple contact is already saying everything.